In this video, I want to talk about a cycle that Satan has many people trapped in. And this cycle, if it happens instantly, then you can see that it's a cycle. That you can see how exhausting and how pointless it is. The reason many don't see how pointless and exhausting it is because this cycle occurs in seasons. And those seasons can be weeks or months. And the cycle is as follows: you consent to something which you later resist. And when it comes to narcissistic relationships, there is a continuous repetition of consent and resistance. Consent, resistance, consent, resistance. It goes on and off, on and off. Back and forth, back and forth. Now look, if there is a fight going on, an argument, where one argument is thrown, then another one, there's denial, and people keep on fighting, fussing and fussing, then everyone around will become tired, exhausting, and some may even intervene just for the sake of ending it. That is an obvious downward spiral that only escalates. What Satan does is he traps you in a cycle of consent and resistance in which you go back and forth, but you don't realize you're going back and forth because there is this delay between the consent and the resistance. If the consent and resistance happened within seconds, over and over again, you would realize that it's insane, that you have to stop. You would realize, I need help, I need to get out of this. And that is what makes this cycle so attractive. And that's why this cycle is so deceptive, because there's a delay in the exhaustion. If you would get exhausted instantly when you are trapped in a demonic cycle, you wouldn't even stay in the cycle because you would be exhausted instantly, and that would be a warning already that this is bad. But if you're in a demonic cycle and the exhaust and you being exhausted happens in installments, it happens in stages, then you're likely not to realize that you're being drained. Look, there is this myth about throwing a frog in a pot with boiling water. The frog jumps out of it immediately because the frog knows he's going to die if he stays in the water. But if you put the frog in lukewarm water and then begin to boil it slowly and slowly, the frog will not realize when it's boiling and the frog will be dead. Now, in reality, frogs jump out when it gets too hot. But for the example's sake, when the frog is boiled to death, why did the frog die? Well, obviously the environment was bad. That's why the frog died. The frog was in boiling water. But hold on a minute. Did the frog consent to die? No. The frog consented to comfort. But the comfort was a trap to kill the frog. So, there was consent with the frog, and if the water would have become too hot too soon, there would have been resistance. What if it goes on and off? Then too hot, then lukewarm, then too hot, then lukewarm. What's happening now is that the frog is mentally conditioned to stay in that dangerous location, namely the pot. While it's obvious to any outsider that he needs to get out of the pot. And that is what Satan does to us. Satan brings us in relationships. He drags us in relationships. He drags us into systems where we are attracted to that individual, or we are attracted to the ideal of the organization. There's something that entices us. There's some incentive that tricks us to want to be involved. And that incentive in itself is not wrong. If it's someone from the opposite sex, then your sexual desires are not evil nor bad, as long as they are fulfilled on God's terms, because then there is safety and prosperity. So Satan will use incentives to get you involved with certain people and with certain organizations. But here's the thing: the curses that haunt those people and those organizations, you don't see them. The charm that's on those people or on that organization blurs your perception so you don't see the curses. If you're a man and Satan entices you to be involved sexually with an accursed woman, your attention will be on very different things. You get what I'm saying here. If you're a woman and Satan wants to entice you to be sexually involved with an accursed man, you'll be focused on all other stuff. If you are unemployed and really need a job, your mind is on getting a job as soon as possible. So Satan will entice you to get a job that seems to solve all your financial and social issues. So whatever it is that Satan uses to entice you depends on your personal circumstances. That's why I'm telling you, believers, anytime you're going through a transition in your life, you're extra vulnerable. And it's during those transitions that the enemy makes his move. Whether you just moved to another country, or you moved to another place, or you got a new job, or you went through a divorce, or just got married, or just had a child, whatever the transition is that happened in your life, during your transition periods, you are the most vulnerable. So what Satan does is he comes with his substitutes, fake blessings, which are really delayed curses, and he tricks us into accepting them. Now, we are doing the accepting, but look at this. We are not aware that it's a curse that we're accepting. The moment we would be aware of it, we wouldn't accept it. We wouldn't. So the enemy hides the second part of the cycle, which is the ruin. The enemy hides the ruin by using propaganda, so we're so focused on the alleged benefits that we'll get from either this individual or that group or that organization. And Satan's quite good at it. He's been doing this for thousands of years. He has deceived and killed multitudes of people by doing this. So Satan is quite experienced. I'm not saying this to praise him. I'm saying this to alert you. Satan knows this doing. He has done his homework. He has developed throughout the centuries. He knows how to deceive masses of people. So, when you consent to whatever project Satan handed out to you, the moment you consent, you get this rush of euphoria, like you won the jackpot. And this is why the spell works. Because this rush of euphoria that you get will blind you from the obvious red flags that you should be able to see. But because you're so overwhelmed by euphoria, you don't see the red flags. And before you know it, there will be resistance. You'll be thinking later on, for example, let's say it's a toxic sexual relationship that Satan wanted you in. In the beginning, there's going to be a lot of euphoria. There's going to be frequent sex. There's going to be, if it's in a marital context, you got married, then there's also social validation by the community that you're married. So where it happens, according to the tradition or according to a progressive way, it doesn't matter. There's going to be a lot of euphoria and a lot of ease. Slowly but slowly, the ruin will manifest. And when the ruin manifests, you go into resistance. You don't want to ruin. Why? Because you signed up for a happy marriage. You signed up for a hot girlfriend, or you signed up for a hot boyfriend. You signed up for something, at least from your part, and now the thing you've signed up for is fading away. And now you're fighting to retain what's fading away. But here's the thing. It's not really fading away. It was never there to begin with. Oh, let me repeat that. It was never there to begin with. You thought it was there, and because you thought it was there, namely a solution to your loneliness or a solution to your unfulfilled desires or a solution to your financial difficulties, whatever it is, you thought it was there. And because you thought it was there, you associated whatever Satan was tricking you into as something that you needed or as something that was relevant to you. Your perception was blurred. You have been conned into investing in a project that was doomed to fail because the outcome that was suggested unto you, it was never there. You thought it was there, so in your mind you felt as if it was there, but it was never there. So now that there's resistance, now you're becoming depressed, now you're stressed out, now you want solutions. And for a moment, when you push extra, the demons will reward you and things will come at ease again. And then you think, yes, then you consent again. But it's a charm, so it will fade away. So then there will be resistance again. Then you want to go back to where you consent again. That's how it goes on and on and on. Back and forth, and this exhausts you over time. And when you are so exhausted that you can't think clearly anymore, it often happens that you're taken out. You're suddenly kidnapped, or you suddenly have a terrible accident, a tragic accident, or whatever happens to you if you're taken out. That's how a lot of people were taken out by the enemy. Again, what I've just explained doesn't only apply to sexual relationships, even though people often use this explanation in that context. It applies to anything. It applies to your career, it applies to friendships, it applies to family relationships, it applies to economic activities, it applies to any type of false promise the enemy makes. Because remember, the enemy is a father of lies. He is the chief reprobate, he will never change, and he is experienced in tricking people into ruin. And he knows that if he would present the curse for what it really is, everyone would say no. So he presents the curse in such a way that the curse appears as a blessing. And when you consent to what appears to be a blessing, without you being aware of it, you've consented to the curse. So that is why we need to rely on the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Whatever it is that the world is offering you, it's a curse in disguise. You often don't see the curse in the beginning. That's the purpose, that you don't see the curse for what it really is. Because the moment you would see the curse what it really is, you'd be out of there. So, this whole idea of consent, now consent is needed in daily life. I mean, when it comes to sexuality, consent is needed. You get what I'm saying, or else it's rape, or else it's sexual violence, all of that. So consent is important. It's a key ingredient in stable and safe relationships. However, we often take this idea of consent too far and turning it into an idol, where we want control, where everything has to happen on our terms, with our permission. We want to play God. And sometimes even believers get this obsession or develop this obsession for control, which is part of the fallen mind that they had to be renewed from. Consent is practical when it comes to relationships, but even then it must be in context, because not everything can be an option in daily life. I mean, you live in a community, so the community cannot ask every community member if they want to be governed, if they want to get along, if they want to comply with safety and justice. No, everyone is supposed to comply with safety and justice, and if they don't, they have to be made to comply. So when it comes to safety and security, consent is not that relevant. Why? Because anyone that does not consent to safety is aligning themselves with danger, and danger should be shut down so that there is safety in the community. So consent should be placed in the proper context. I do not support sexual violence, so I'm not saying that consent is irrelevant. I'm just saying that consent must be in context. For example, when it comes to public safety on the road, I don't care whether a drunk driver consents to looking for help or not. He's on the road, he's a threat to people because he's driving drunk, so he should look for help. That's different than a marital relationship. So you get what I'm saying. Look at the context. What we often do is we take this thing called consent and we make it God. As long as we consent, it's all fine. What if what you consent to is evil in the long term? What if your agreement with something enables evil? Because consent has to do with allowing something to just be and allowing it to affect you. And we allow things to affect us that we are in agreement with. But what if what you are in agreement with is wrong? What if your thinking is bad? Then you will be consenting to bad stuff, and that's part of the trap. If you, for example, had a negative view or a bad view of what masculinity is as a woman, then you will consent to toxic males being in your life. If you are, as a man, if you never experience what healthy femininity is, then you will likely consent to toxic females in your life. If you never had any other option than to allow yourself to be enslaved in exchange for low payment, then you are likely to consent to exploitation. So just because you're able to consent does not mean that it's going to be well. So, consent and resistance. We often perceive them as two complete separate and opposite things. They are not. In daily life, consent and resistance are part of a cycle. It's part of a demonic cycle to keep you going back and forth, to exhaust you, so you won't be able to do God's will. And this cycle is used on unbelievers to keep them distracted, so they end up in the lake of fire with Satan. Satan is sending people to hell with this cycle of consent and resistance. Don't fall for it. Be at peace.